And welcome back, everyone. This is the Speculative Bookshelf and beyond. This episode will go beyond speculative fiction into what's known as an anti-Western. An anti-Western is a novel with a Western setting, but it doesn't follow your typical Western genre tropes. And I'll let you look into it further beyond that. Today I'm going to talk about the novel The Track of the Cat by Walter Van Tilburg Clark. You may recognize that name, Van Tilburg Clark, as the author of The Oxbow Incident, which was an assigned book for reading for me way back decades ago in high school. And I actually enjoyed the Oxbow Incident. Can't say as much for my other classmates. They were your typical teenagers. Oh, what a bunch of bull, blah, blah, blah. But I decided I would revisit Clark. I'm going to reread the Oxbow Incident later this year, but in the meantime, I decided to read The Track of the Cat. The Track of the Cat is, like I said, an anti-Western. At first glance, it looks like a frontier survival story. You have a family, a ranch in the Sierra Nevada mountains, a dangerous predator, and a hunt that promises a dramatic, climactic confrontation. But very quickly, the novel reveals itself as something colder. And I use that word colder deliberately, as you'll see in just a couple of minutes. It's a philosophical cousin to Herman Melville's Moby Dick. It's less theatrical, but arguably more ruthless. This is not a story about killing a big cat. It's a story about what happens when humans demand meaning from the world and the world refuses to provide it. In brief, like I said, the story involves a ranching family in the Sierra Nevadas, and they're experiencing an unseasonably cold weather. It's only October, and they're suffering a blizzard. And this ranching family, it's a dysfunctional family. The father is literally outlived his usefulness. All he's good for now is just drinking and playing card games. The mother has a shameful past that she overcompensates for now by being angrily and bitterly religious. And these two parents, they form a grim counterpoint in the novel. The mother clings to a rigid biblical morality now, overcorrecting for a past that she cannot forgive. And like I said, the father retreats into drinking and card playing. Between them, one demands absolute order, and the other accepts chaos without responsibility. And neither position offers any wisdom, just coping mechanisms. They have 4 children, all grown and older, all living together dysfunctionally and claustrophobically in this small ranch cabin. Arthur, the eldest, is 37. He's stoic and introspective, and that leads his couple of years younger brother, Kurt, to tease him with nicknames of a priest or monk. Kurt, meanwhile, he's about 35, I think, in this novel. He's highly skilled in tracking and hunting, but he's brash and overly confident. The daughter, Grace, is another couple of years younger, and she's an old maid, a spinster. She feels closest to her eldest brother, Arthur, and in fact feels overly protective towards him. And then there's a large age gap between when we get to the youngest brother, Harold, who's only 19 as the story begins. Well, as the story ends too, he's still 19. But he has a 21-year-old girlfriend who neither of his parents are keen on because, for one thing, she's older, and she comes from Welsh mining stock. And those Welsh miners grow old beyond their years. And then the only other human character is their ranch hand, an old ranch hand, an old Paiute Indian. No one knows quite how old. All they know is that he was old when they were young. Anyways, his name is Joe Sam. The mother doesn't like Joe Sam because he gives her the creeps. He tends to fall into these trance-like states where he won't eat. He has to be forced to eat, and he doesn't speak. And the mother can't handle this, and she just knows that one day he's going to cut all their throats while they're sleeping, which leads Arthur to reply to his mom, well, then he's been planning for it an awful long time since he's been with us 18 years now. Anyways, like it says, the story opens with an early blizzard coming on, and the boys are all, well, Arthur first is wakened from his sleep, hearing the cattle bellowing out in the distance. They're making an awful crying sounds. And he wakes his brothers, and they realize that this must be the black painter. Painter being the word they used back then for panther. It seems that a panther has been, or a mountain lion. No one's actually seen this black painter, but they see the results of their cattle being killed. And like I said, no one has seen this actual black panther or painter, except for Joe Sam, who's seen him in his visions. He tells them that this is a black painter, and over the years the myth has grown to where this black painter is big as a horse. And the two eldest brothers, they go out to track him down and be rid of him once and for all. And this brings us directly to the novel's most important direct symbolic parallel to Moby Dick. Both novels center on a mythical animal of an unnatural color. Moby Dick being, of course, the white whale, and Clark gives us a black panther, which, though black panthers exist, they don't exist above Mexico. They don't exist in the Sierra Nevadas. They do have cougars or mountain lions. So biologically, these creatures are nearly or entirely impossible. The albino whale is an extreme rarity in nature, and the black panther doesn't exist up in the mountains where they live. And symbolically, that impossibility matters. These are no longer just animals. They've crossed over into myths. And crucially, the animals are rarely seen, or in the case of the painter, never seen. And its absence matters more than its actual presence. And the hunt for each of these animals reveals more about human psychology than it does about animal behavior. Each of the creatures becomes a blank surface on which one man's obsession is projected. In Moby Dick, we have Captain Ahab, who is obsessed with getting that white whale, even if it kills him, which it does. In The Track of the Cat, that obsession belongs to the second eldest brother, Kurt. As mentioned earlier, Kurt is brash, headstrong, and just certain of his own competence. He frames the hunt as a test of his own masculinity and his mastery over the cat. And the cat must be killed, not just for the safety of them and of their cattle, but for meaning. And when he goes out on his hunt, the eldest brother, Arthur, accompanies him, not out of a similar obsession or mania, but out of a sense of duty, out of obligation. someone has to accompany Kurt out there. Kurt is, actually just, he's stoic, responsible, and unobsessed. And this is where I'm going to go into a little bit of spoiler territory, and I will put a warning up there, and you'll be able to see when the spoiler is finished. So you can turn down the sound or take out your earbud or otherwise just, eliminate the sound while I tell you this. Like I said, Arthur accompanies Kurt, not out of obsession himself, but because of an obligation. Someone has to be with Kurt. And that's what makes his death devastating. Arthur dies not because he's chasing some obsession or some meaning, but because he is adjacent to someone who is chasing their own obsession or meaning. And the novel's moral at this point is kind of bleak and precise. Your own restraint cannot protect you from someone else's obsession, and that deepens the tragedy of Arthur's death. But that's not the worst of it. Here's the novel's cruel twist. The cat does not kill Kurt. That is to say, Kurt does not die at the hands or at the claws of the cat. When his body is found near the end of the novel, Harold, the youngest brother who has gone out to search for him, he notices something chilling. He sees Kurt's footsteps, his trail, but he does not see the cat's trail. The cat's tracks never crosses Kurt's. So the cat never caught up with Kurt. Kurt instead dies from a fall, from a snow eave from a cliff. The snow had gathered at the edge of the cliff, and where he was standing was not on solid ground. He falls to the rocks below and crushes his face and skull. He dies instead from his brashness and overconfidence and from the land that he knows best. But the land didn't care. His obsession is denied its ending, and Kurt is denied his closure. Kurt's death is not punishment, it's not justice, and it's not symbolic closure. It's indifference. Nature didn't even care enough to stage a showdown with him. So then this brings us to Joe Sam, the old ranch hand, the Paiute Indian, the novel's quiet center. Joe Sam, I guess, can be compared to Ishmael from Moby Dick. He's an outsider, a witness, and someone who survives because he refuses myth-making. Joe Sam doesn't turn the cat into destiny. He doesn't turn anyone else into a hero. And he doesn't turn the land into a moral force. He understands something that no one else fully does. The danger isn't the animal, it's the story that people tell themselves about it. Joe Sam survives not through strength, but by keeping his distance from obsession. And this is what makes Clarke's writing style so essential to the story. Clarke's prose is simple, matter-of-fact, and almost stubbornly unliterary. The prose aligns us not with Kurt's or anyone else's sense of urgency, but with Joe Sam's clarity. We are witnesses, not participants. Clarke doesn't tell us how to feel. He doesn't elevate suffering into meaning, and he doesn't heighten emotions. He doesn't linger on thrills, and he doesn't dramatize danger. Moments that should feel exciting, like tracking the cat, moving through treacherous snow, and approaching death, these are all rendered with a procedural calm, as if Lieutenant Columbo, remember him, the old cool-headed police detective, it's as if Lieutenant Columbo were writing it. The sentences report, they don't perform. And This restraint in the writing creates an unsettling effect. The prose refuses to care as much as the characters do. For example, in one of the tracking scenes, Clark describes the movement through the snow, the presence of danger, and the environment's resistance. But the language stays flat, unemotional, and just observational. When something threatening happens, it's often phrased in terms of what happened and not how it felt. There's no rhetorical drum roll to, increase the drama or tension. There's no heroic framing of the character, and no emotional instructions to the reader. The writing behaves like the land itself, steady, impersonal, and unimpressed. And that's the point. If Clark's prose becomes lyrical, it would grant meaning that isn't there. If it becomes action-driven, it would imply heroism, which isn't there. Remember, this is an anti-Western. Instead, it withholds both. Like the land itself, the novel simply watches and tells and moves on. Oddly enough, though it seems like a slow, drawn-out story, it had a cinematic quality to me, not of the action and grandeur and everything, but just of more of something you might feel from an Ingmar Bergman film or John Huston rather than John Ford. Clark's writing dwells excruciatingly on just little details of fixing breakfast and drinking coffee. The film in my mind was, seeing the camera in a close-up of hands around a coffee cup, and just that extreme close-up, just showing the coffee cup and maybe the cup being lifted and a sip of coffee, and then following it back down, placing it on the table again. And from what I've seen, reading some of the 1- and 2-star reviews, this slow-paced delivery of the narrative causes some readers to just grow impatient with the book and to DNF it. That's their loss. This book is not for thrill-a-minute readers. This book rewards patience and thought. The Track of the Cat is a novel about a hunt that never quite happens, an enemy that never really confirms itself, and tragedies that refuse to justify themselves. Like Moby Dick, it asks what happens when humans demand meaning from nature. But unlike Moby Dick, it answers with silence. And that silence might be the most frightening thing of all.